With the release of Unreal Engine 5.1 last November, we got a new feature called overlay materials. You can apply an overlay material on any static or skeletal mesh, and they can be used for things like shields and buff effects and damage effects. But if you've played around with overlay materials some, you may have noticed that you can't create a dynamic material instance in your blueprint graph for an overlay material, at least not as of Unreal 5.2, so we can't control any parameters directly on the material that way. So then you're kind of limited to just setting and resetting them, but what if you want to do things like fade them in or out, or control variables based on things that happen in your blueprint graph? So while you can't do this with dynamic material instances, you can use material collection parameters, and that's what we'll cover today in this quick fix video. I've created this effect that's kind of like the Oduris potion in Hogwarts Legacy, where our character is covered in this rock material, and we'll use the material collection parameter to control the brightness of these runes when I press the attack button. So material collection parameter is essentially a set of scalar or vector variables that live outside of the material itself. They can be shared across many materials too if you need it to affect multiple materials at once. So to create one, right-click in your content browser and go to Materials and Material Parameter Collection. It's a good idea to use the naming convention MPC_, so then you can find it easier later. So once that's created, open it up and you'll see the scalar and vector parameter sections. Scalars are usually for numbers like integers and floats, and vectors are useful for things like colors. So for my purposes, I'll click on the plus icon to create a scalar parameter. This is going to be our room brightness, so I'll name it that, and then I'll keep the default value of 0. Then switching over to the overlay material that I'm using, this is the M_rock material that comes with Unreal. I've added this rune texture to the emissive pin to get these symbols to light up. You can do this with any pattern or texture that has a black background, so these white parts are gonna be emissive while the black part is transparent. And then I'm multiplying that by a color to get this reddish tint, but that's not really necessary. And then finally I'm multiplying that by a parameter to control the strength of that glow. So if we were able to set this overlay material as a dynamic material instance from within the blueprint graph, then we would be able to control this parameter directly. But since we can't do that, we'll replace this with the parameter collection that we just created. So you can right click and search for collection, and you'll get this collection parameter node. Then pick your NPC on the left hand side, and then make sure you tick the drop down next to that to select your parameter name. The runes won't be visible because our default value here is 0, but if you go back to your NPC, you can change that to 1 to make sure that it's working. So now in our character blueprint, I have a super simple input that plays the attack animation off the montage node. As the animation plays, I'll do a set scalar parameter value, and you'll see this node ask you to pick a material parameter collection. We'll select the collection that we just made here, and then pick your parameter in the dropdown. So just to demonstrate this, I'll put a static value of, let's say, 50. So when the animation plays, we're going to set the brightness of those runes to 50 right away. And you can see that that's working when we try it in our editor. So as always with scalar parameters, to smooth this out, you can always add a timeline like the one I have that takes that value from 0 to 50 and then back to 0 again over the span of a second. So you can use material parameter collections to control the overlay materials or any other materials in your project from within any blueprint. So they're super handy. For example, you can set the rune color as a vector parameter as well, and then we can change that dynamically inside of our event graph as well. And then another good example is if your player mesh has multiple material slots like mine does, and you want to change something on all of them at the same time, you can use the NPC to do that. So in this example, I have a scalar parameter from the NPC hooked up to a dither AA node in all 4 of these materials. And then when I press the G key, it fades them all out at the same time. And then this basically saves you from having to create dynamic material instances for each of these. I hope this quick overview of material parameter collections was useful. It's a super powerful feature of Unreal that lets you control one or more materials using the same set of variables. Hopefully this gave you some inspiration on how to solve a challenge in your project, or maybe a cool new feature to add. If you got any value out of this, I'd really appreciate you hitting the like and subscribe buttons below the video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.